The Sacrifice by William X. Kienzle. Copyright 2001 by Gopitz Incorporated. This full-length reading of The Sacrifice was published by arrangement with Andrews McMeel Publishing and was produced in 2001 by Books on Tape Incorporated, which holds the copyright thereto. This book has 280 pages and is read by Edward Holland. Should you have any questions about this recording, please call the customer service number shown on the package for information or assistance. Dedication. For Javon, my wife and collaborator. In memory of the Reverend George Wheatley. Chapter 1. The Catholic Church is dead. It just doesn't know enough to lie down and roll over. Father Daniel Reichert recoiled as if he'd been struck. How can you say such a thing? You, of all people. Just look around you, Father Harry Morgan responded, with an all-encompassing gesture. Everyone running about like chickens who've been relieved of their heads. He turned back to Reichert. And what for? What for, indeed, thought Reichert. The ceremony that was about to begin was meaningless at best and heretical at worst. But that it threatened the very existence of the Church, the one holy, Catholic, and Apostolic Church. Certainly his boon companion, Morgan, had to be hyperbolizing. Harry knew as well as he that the Catholic Church was indefectible. Jesus had said so. Behold, I am with you all days, even to the end of time. No, the one true Church could not be dying, let alone dead. You ought to have a more open mind, Reichert rebuked. Morgan's lip curled. You should talk. In effect, each priest had just accused the other of being narrow-minded. If truth be known, it was simply a matter of degree. Reichert and Morgan shared an epoch. Born in the 20s, parents staunch Catholics, the priesthood looked upon as an exalted calling. The two had entered the seminary a couple of years apart. Morgan was the elder by 2 years. They advanced through the seminary, high school, college, and theologate, in what would later be known as the pre-Vatican II era. The transformation that rumbled through the Church when the beloved Pope John XXIII opened some windows and let the present in affected Catholics variously. Where once liturgy, law, and theology had been marked by a universal rigid sameness, after the Second Vatican Council, indisputability was replaced by uncertainty. Gradually 2 camps formed. One was the conservative wing, fundamentalist, dedicated to a counter-reformation, committed to a return to the pre-Vatican II Church. The other held to a liberalism that would not be static, no matter how uncompromising the Vatican remained. Fathers Morgan and Reichert were devoted to a fairly firm conservatism. Even so, they could and sometimes did differ between themselves. This was such an occasion. The Archdiocese of Detroit was about to receive into its presbyterate a former Episcopal priest. His wife and a younger son would follow the priest into the Roman Church. The other son and a daughter, middle child, were quite another matter. The decision as to whether to accept such ministers or priests into the Roman Catholic priesthood was left up to each individual diocese. If such a judgment was affirmative, there were still many bases to touch, steps to be taken. But in any case, the matter clearly was controversial. On the one hand was the incontrovertible fact that Catholic priests were in critically short supply, and that shortfall was pretty much worldwide. In Detroit, for instance, parishes that had been assigned as many as 3 or even 4 priests in the 50s and 60s, now, commonly, were staffed by only 1, and many parishes that had held 1 or 2 priests were now closed for simple want of a pastor. Recruitment was one obvious avenue toward a solution. Detroit, as well as other dioceses, gave that possibility a professional shot, to little avail. Priests who had become inactive, in many cases choosing married life rather than celibacy, had a snowball's chance in hell of being called back to priestly duty. Offering ordination to married men and or to women was a proposition that the Vatican had shot down repeatedly. In fact, Rome considered the latter two potential solutions dead issues. Proponents kept insisting that there was life in the concepts yet. But those who wanted to reactivate priests and/or invest women, and those living in matrimony, were not in charge of making the rules. Then, seemingly out of the blue, came an unforeseen phenomenon. A trickle of Episcopal priests left their church to seek refuge in the Roman Church. By no means was such a defection of gangbuster proportions, but it was interesting, if not noteworthy. Ordination to the priesthood, which some Roman Catholic feminists desired, was accorded to women in the Episcopal Church, and then to women in the Church of England, mother church of all who call themselves Anglican. Such a drastic turn of events had its own reverberations. Many male Anglican priests took extreme umbrage at what they saw as a betrayal of tradition. As a result, many of these men now wanted out. They felt there was no place for them in a priesthood that included women, let alone female bishops, a development that followed inevitably on the heels of the breakthrough. But these men had given their lives to the Anglican Church. What were they to do? The toothpaste was out of the tube. A female clergy was now part of the Anglican communion. That would not revert to a former discipline. Some of these aggrieved men felt impelled to abandon their denomination. But where could they go? For some, the obvious path led back to the Roman Catholic Church, pre-Henry VIII version. But would they be welcomed by Rome? The answer was, what else? The creation of a commission to address this specific matter. In 1980, the Vatican, responding to petitions from both Episcopal priests and Episcopal laity, created a pastoral provision to give the question special pastoral attention. These Episcopalians desired full communion with the Roman Catholic Church. In this provision, former Episcopal priests, accepted as candidates for ordination in the Roman Catholic Church, would undertake theological, spiritual, and pastoral preparation for such ordination. Thus, ordination of married Episcopal priests as priests of the Roman Catholic Church was made possible. The provision also authorized the establishment of personal parishes in Roman Catholic dioceses of the United States. This was the response to the request of the former faithful of the Episcopal Church that they might be permitted to retain certain liturgical practices proper to the Anglican tradition. Since 1983, close to 100 former Anglican priests had been ordained for Roman Catholic priestly ministry. Just under 10 personal parishes had been established, wherein the Book of Common Prayer was authorized. However, news of the Episcopalian migration, not to mention the pastoral provision, qualified as trivial in scope. The parade of a handful of Anglican priests toward Rome might be reported in religious publications at most. The secular media generally overlooked the story. But now this event was a first for the Detroit Archdiocese as well as the metropolitan area. As was the case with most premier events, this ordination attracted some attention. In addition to this being a first, there was the fact that the priest involved was a local celebrity. A string of accomplishments fattened Father George Wheatley's curriculum vitae. His relevant activities included a weekly column on the op-ed page of the combined Sunday edition of the two metropolitan papers, as well as an hour-long weekly radio program on CKWW, a Canadian station serving Windsor and Detroit. He was sought after as a lecturer and after-dinner speaker. His every church function, whether it be the Eucharist or an informal prayer service, was well attended. Before committing to a specific service, people phoned to ascertain which liturgies he would be celebrating, so they could be sure of having him in the pulpit. Far from objecting to the admission of women into the diaconate or the priesthood, not to mention the hierarchy, Father Wheatley had supported this feminist cause long before it became a reality. Indeed, his only daughter was now in the seminary, studying for holy orders. As was typical within the Anglican community, he was able to inject a good many of his personal beliefs into his sermons, columns, speeches, and teachings. In short, from those who knew.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?